Hello everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my Friends Pick My TBR number 5. Pretty sure it's number 5. We're going back to my old roots with this one. I just asked my friends in real life, 3 of them, if they could pick some books for me. If you haven't been around enough for my Friends Pick My TBR, what I do is I send pictures to my friends of my entire unread TBR, and they each pick 2 books that I have to read in a month. And this month, my Friends Pick My TBR month. So we're getting down here. We're gonna talk about the books. I'm also sick, so I do apologize for starting this video sick, but that is how I'm starting my February, so I apologize. A little lopsided, but it'll work here on my couch. Okay, so my friends picked the books and we're ready to go. This time around, there's a lot of chunky ones, but I will only really talk about the books when I'm actually reading them in this video. I'll just tell you who picked what. Overall, so psyched for this month. All of these are books that I'm hyped to read. It's a good choice all around. My friend SJ ended up picking these 2 books. She picked Leviathan Wakes by James A. Corey, which is an epic sci-fi, and she picked Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. My friend Sophie ended up picking Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert, and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is actually Sophie's favorite book from last year, so I figured she'd probably pick it. And my friend Yeleni picked Kaikei by Vaishnavi Patel, which I was, as of last year, about 200 pages into, so I will be restarting this and actually finishing it this year, or this month, this go around. And she also picked Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a chunky TBR, but I'm amped for every single one of these books. It's going to be a good time, and we're just going to get this started. That's the intro. I'll see you in a bit with the first pick. Hi friends, I thought I'd pop in and talk to y'all about the first book that I'm reading for this video. I'm really reading Leviathan Wakes by James S. A. Corey, which is a pseudonym for an author duo. Said author duo, I do not know the names of. Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. This is epic space opera. This specific book is set up as almost like a mystery right from the beginning, because we get like a prologue of this girl on a ship and something extremely traumatic happens to her. And then we jump to our 2 main characters of this book, Jim Holden and Detective Miller. Jim Holden is an XO of an ice miner ship making its rounds from the rings of Saturn. And he ends up finding this ship called the Scopuli, which is what the ship the girl was on originally. And they go onto the ship and find something really dangerous, end up leaving the ship, but then like they're in a little like freighter vessel, not a freighter vessel, but like a little baby vessel that's like gone from their main vessel, you know? And there's like 4 or 5 of them in the ship, and as they come out of the Scopuli back onto their little baby ship, they watch essentially as their main ship is just destroyed. That happens in Jim's like first little few things. And then Detective Miller is tasked with looking for a girl by the name of Julie, and she's the girl from the prologue. So it's kind of like they have these ties to, like, both of them are kind of dealing with the ship named the Scopuli and that kind of stuff. And where I am, Jim has just done something that a lot of people think is really, really stupid. He's kind of declared war on Mars, question mark. Detective Miller thinks that his case with Julie is just like a rich parents just trying to find their kid, kind of a throwaway job. Immediately, 50 pages in when I was reading this for the first time a couple nights ago when I started this. I am currently like 90 pages in, maybe. I was so into it, so like just drawn in, and it feels like just like the addictive nature of a new TV show that you just can't put down. And it's got that vibe to it, so I am not surprised at all that this is a TV show called The Expanse. So I hopefully will be watching that TV show at some point, because this is very cool to me. I'm enjoying it. And so far, a lot of the tech, hard to follow, but also not hard to follow what's going on. We love this, especially when it comes to hard sci-fi like this, because if you guys didn't know, I'm a little bit of a baby when it comes to sci-fi, because I only really got into it a couple years ago. 2021, I think, is when I got into it. My favorite sci-fis are like Becky Chambers and The Last Watch by J.S. Dews. So I like the approachable space operas that have a very human element to them and that are easy to follow. So I was a little wary going into this big epic boy here, but we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. I ended up putting a poll on Instagram, and should have said this at the beginning. A poll on Instagram to essentially like, which of these 6 books should I start without showing any of their titles, just numbering them and then shrinking it down. And this one and Talia Hibbert had won out of that, but they tied. So I put up another poll and said, which one should I start first? And this one won. This is one of the many big chunky boys on the TBR. So hopefully I can get through this pretty quickly. I will let you know how I'm feeling about it about halfway through. But yes, we're starting. Hello friends, it has now been a little while since I last talked to you, but did want to hop in and talk to you about Leviathan Wakes, because I am just over halfway through. Both Goodreads and Storygraph say 54%, but when I look at it, it looks like more than 54%. Anyways, I'm on page 321 of this glorious book, and I haven't read it in a couple days because Sunday night when I was reading it, I ended up staying up way later than I thought because I was in this long sequence of stress and I needed to find out if our characters were going to be okay. And I was just like, oh, I have to keep going. I have to keep going. This is absolutely brutal. Oh my God, what is happening? Oh my God. I don't want to spoil you guys if you want to read this book at all or any of the books in this video. It'll be hopefully as non-spoilery as possible, but this book reads like a damn TV show. And I think I said that at the beginning when I was talking about how addictive this book was, or like how easy and gripping it was. It is truly addictive. I'm worried that the ending of this book is going to make me run out and get book 2. Like, I'm not worried. I'm just like, is this what's going to happen? Am I going to just like dive headlong into this long epic sci-fi series right now? Like, it's unreal. We have 2 characters. We have Holden and Miller. Where I'm at, they've just gone through some of the most brutal, traumatic shit I've ever seen in my life. One of the characters, the man is a hairline fracture away from losing his goddamn mind. Like, he is on the brink of a full breakdown. And it's the kind of breakdown that you're like, oh, I don't know if I can look away from this happening right now, because this man's life is falling apart. And so it's just so interesting to see. I think I saw a TikTok recently or in a comment somewhere about this series, about how, like, if you want to read something about people who aren't necessarily all good doing things and not necessarily knowing what the hell that they're doing is good, and you just want to see like more realistic nitty-gritty things, this is the series to pick up, because like our characters in here are just going through it because they have to, and they don't necessarily know what they're doing at all. I'm so intrigued, and I know like from book to book the character point of views change, which I'm very intrigued by, because obviously the 2 characters in here, Holden and Miller, are very central to the plot. Like, they are the 2 biggest ringers in this happening right now, to get into it from different sides, I think, because Holden was there when his like original ship blew up, and then he was like the one who basically said like, hey, and like broadcasted this thing like, this is what happened, this is the evidence that I have, and everybody else took it as a declaration of war on Mars, like all the people who heard the broadcast. And so Holden is like in it, and he's what they call an earther, like he was someone who was born in gravity is what their whole thing was. And then there's belters, who are people who were born outside of gravity, who are very, very, very tall. I love that little like snippet. The fact that you were born outside of gravity means that you are so much taller, and I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why I'm so tall. I was born outside of gravity. I don't know. I love that little snippet. Miller is a belter. He was born out in the belt. He's like the detective, the gritty cop, and he's like a 50-year-old man. He's gone through some shit. He drinks, and it's like reading a TV show. And honestly, I'm so intrigued to watch The Expanse now, but I'm scared that I'll watch The Expanse and get spoiled for something that happens in the show, in like the book series. So maybe I'll get like 3 books in and then I'll start watching the show or something like that. But I do want to see how they translate this to TV, because it already is so intriguing and also so freaking brutal. Some of the descriptions in here just had me going like, I rarely get to experience this because sometimes like the way that books are formatted, my eyes like to flick to the end of chapters and spoil myself of like something really big that's happened at the end of a chapter. Something happened in here where it was like, you know when you come to the end of a chapter, but the end of a chapter is on like this little piece of a page, right? So you're like reading, and then you flip the page and you are shook by the greatest travesty that has ever occurred. That happened to me. I fully gasped out loud. That never happens to me, y'all. I'm not a very reactive reader unless it's like fully crying, right? Like I don't, like I'll laugh or I'll chuckle or I'll like inhale air through my nose, imitating a laugh or a chuckle. I don't usually gasp. So I'm loving this book. There have been a couple phrases in here that have made like skeeved me right out and given me like the huge ick, which I think is a product of the fact it was published in 2011 by two men. And so like some of the lines, some of the phrases haven't aged very well, but there have been a couple things in here that our characters will say, and then the narrator will call them out like that same sentence and like literally call it out for racism as it is, which we love to see. Like you can have racist characters, but you don't have to be racist yourself in your books as the author kind of thing, as long as you treat it well enough and it is explained and shown as being racist. I am thriving. Truly thriving. So I'm done Leviathan Wakes. I love Friends. It's been a second. Hi, I'm done Leviathan Wakes. And wow, what a book. All of my comments stand from my previous update. This book was top notch for levels of stress. Levels of stress and for like keeping you engaged until I want to say about like the 75% mark. Then we got like a false ending, which I knew it was a false ending because we had over 100 pages left of the book and things were like wrapping up. And I'm like, okay, well, something big has to happen at the end of this book because there's not going to be just 100 pages of nothing after all of this craziness. But yeah, I think the ending was too drawn out. Like I kept sitting here and being like, what do you mean there's still an hour left on the audiobook? I'm listening to it at 3.2 times speed. Like that's ridiculous. What do you mean? Like what, like come on, get going, we need to get into this. But there is so much information that needs to be learned by our characters, and there needs to be all of these little situations that I honestly don't know how you could have shrunk it down, but it needed to be shrunk down. You know, it was one of those things that just, I don't know how best to explain it. It just, I don't know. The ending was not my favorite. And I want to see how this series continues and expands because honestly, like I can see how this sets up an epic space opera because we're only getting like the tip of the iceberg here. But if it had ended in a slightly different way, this would have been it could have stood alone so easily. It could be a complete standalone, which is so interesting because it is the beginning of a 9-book series. So I'm really intrigued to see how this goes. I want to know. And I watch a lot of Reagan from Proust Project, and she recently read, I don't know what she just read. What did she just read? Nemesis Games? I'm not sure. She just read another one of these and she said it was the best of the series, and it was like, she's been reading it for a while, so I need to know. Anyways, yeah, stellar first pick. I will let you know what I pick next, but yes. Book 1 is done. Hello, my lovely friends. It is now, I don't even know, February 16th. We're more than halfway through February now. Where did the time go? I've only read 1 book for this video. Oh my God. But I wanted to pop in because I've started the 2nd book of this video, which is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zeve, which was picked by my friend Sophie and was Sophie's favorite book of last year. So I have high hopes for this one, which is probably a little bit unfortunate because I'm currently about like 84 pages in and I don't know about this one, guys. I'm having this little weirdly rough patch in my reading right now. Like I did so well last weekend. That was the weekend that I read 2 of the like Broken Earth trilogy book by N.K. Jemisin. I like knocked it out of the park with those 2, and everything else just seems to pale in comparison right now. I'm not actually comparing them. I should clarify. I just mean like everything since then has kind of been not hitting the mark, which is so unfortunate. But yeah, so I'm about 80 pages in to this book and I'm having a little bit of trouble with the writing. For one, there's too much in it. Like it's trying too hard. I think that's what it is, which is the weirdest thing because for a lot of my favorite books, like The Starless Sea and that kind of stuff, a lot of the reviews are people being like, no, it's trying too hard, or like even The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, like that is packed full of metaphors it is flowery writing for the purpose of flowery writing. This isn't really flowery writing. It's a little bit too try-hardy academic writing, but it's not even an academic writing. I don't know how to explain it. I've been trying to figure out my feelings about this for the past little bit. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Like, I really want to like this, but I'm having a hard time with it. And I think every once in a while, there's a really, really, really big word, or just like a really almost, what's the word for it? Like, not bourgeoisie, but like really intelligent word that I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I was a freaking English major. Like, there's this one sentence here. It says, "It was beautiful, Sam thought, and perhaps he worried a tad ersatz." And I was like, what's ersatz? And I had to stop and Google it. And now it's been used again recently. And I'm like, why? So that's a thing. Like, I'm having a little bit of trouble. And then like literally 2 pages later, the word grok is used. And I was like, the hell does that mean? And I couldn't even figure it out by like context clues. I have to Google these words, which is so maddening to me because I don't want to take time out of my reading experience and like pull myself out of the story to figure out what these things mean. You know, I don't like doing that. Like, even in fantasy books where I don't understand a word, usually I can figure it out by context clues because that's what context is for. And here I was so confused. I was like, I don't know what this means. And because it's like one word, like Sam says, "We grok," Sam said. And then underneath it says, "We do grok." And I take back what I said before and I'm like, what the freaking balls does that mean? Like, there's no context around it to like help me understand what it means. So it takes me right out of the story. So I'm having trouble with the writing, which is so sad to say because usually like verbose, beautiful writing gets me. Like, I love it. Not a fan of that. But I'm trying to like sink into the story and I'm having an issue believing Sam and Sadie's relationship. So this follows Sam and Sadie, and right at the beginning, Sam and Sadie are both going to like college. I think Sam's going to Harvard and Sadie's going to MIT or something. They cross paths in the train station and they haven't spoken in like 6 years. And so they like meet up and then they reconnect in a way over a game. Like, Sadie says like, "Here, try this game out for me. It's one that I made. Let me know what you think of it." My email's on the thing because it's back a little bit in time, not when people had cell phones. That happens and I'm like, okay, that's kind of a fun little meet cute. Then we figure out like how they originally met as kids, and we see how Sam was disabled originally because he has a really terrible left foot and he uses a cane. That's how they met, because Sadie's sister was in the hospital and Sam was also in the hospital because he was just in a car accident. So that's how they met and that's how they became friends. But there's this thing. They meet again 6 years later after a really big falling out as kids. They immediately fall back into jive with each other, which I don't buy at all. Like, I'm sorry. It's 6 years later. These kids have not only grown up, but gone through puberty and are now going to university. There's no way they would snap back that easy. People change so much, right? Like, it's not just me thinking this, right? Like, people change so much. Like, I understand if it was like middle school to high school and like not having seen each other for like 3 years and then them snapping kind of back into place a little bit. Even then, there would be issues snapping into place. Like, you wouldn't necessarily trust the other person because of what happened before or something like that. So the fact that they snap so easy into place, I don't buy their relationship. I don't buy their friendship. I don't get it. I don't get it. Honestly, like, I don't see the draw here, which might just be me. So yeah, those are my thoughts up to this point. I am like not hating the reading experience. I'm intrigued to see where this book goes because I honestly don't know where it's going to go from here. I'm assuming because it's like literary fiction, it's going to be more surrounding around their like relationship as friends. I don't know if this is going to be romantic in any way. It might be because there's like a gentle leaning towards romanticism with the way that Sam views Sadie. You know what this feels like? This just popped into my head. This book feels like something that I could easily study and like write essays on, which doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad or anything. It's one of those books that there's a lot going on. So maybe that's what I'm getting from it. I could easily write an essay about, like, literally in the 80 pages that I've read, I could write an essay about how Sadie is viewed by the men in her life. First by her professor that she dates, and then by Sam, because it's kind of similar, and that's a little bit sad. I also want to let you guys know that I'm going up to the cabin this weekend, and I'm going to be bringing a couple books with me. I think I'm going to be bringing the Talia Hibbert book and Oathbringer, because those are both like the the littlest and then the biggest. I might also do Neverwhere, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna hopefully power through those this weekend. So if I do, you will get the updates on those books when I get back. And hopefully I'll be done tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow by then, but maybe not, depending. I'll catch you when I'm done it, probably. Unless I have more thoughts to share. Hello, friends. It is now a couple days since I last talked to you, and I just finished Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And you know, it's probably Gabrielle Zevin. She's not French. I just looked at her little thing in the back and I realized that she's not French. Gabrielle Zevin? Sure. It sounds so wrong saying it like that, but anyways, I'm still wrapping my mind around it. Obviously, I just finished it, but it was definitely good. It was definitely something, and I can see why a lot of people really, really, really love this. It just fell a bit flat for me. There were parts that I skimmed, unfortunately, because I just didn't really care. One of the parts that changes narrators, I sped read because I was very sad. I didn't want to read it. I got the gist of it because it was just taking so long. It was a slog to get through, and it was also just like, come on, like we got to get to the point. We don't want to dwell in this. And then in another part, in a part where it's essentially just like the narration of a video game, I skipped through because I figured out what was happening like right away. And so I just kind of skimmed through until I got to the end bit, read the end bit, and I was like, okay, cool, whatever. Like it didn't matter for me to read it or not, so I didn't. I don't know. I can see how it hits for people. It just didn't hit for me. And I hate that. I wanted to love this so much more than I did. I've been thinking about it in terms of Cawpile, which is the rating system that I have. It's CAWPILE, created by G from Book Roast. The characters, which is a C, are okay. I found them kind of flat, to be honest, though. Like, I didn't really feel like they had enough going on. And there was a few moments where, well, they had enough going on. There's just something missing from them, I think, to make them feel real to me. And then by the end, I absolutely hated Sam. I hate him so much as a character and a person. Like, I just don't like him at all. Sadie got better throughout, but still, she felt flat for me. I don't know what it is. A little bit of spoilers if you don't want to be spoiled at all, but she's in an abusive relationship near the beginning of this, but in a very, like, it's a very, like, a standard relationship that probably wouldn't be taken as abusive unless you really looked at it through a lens that you know is abuse. It's one of those. Like, she always says that he gets her consent for things, but even in the moments where we see that, she's not actually giving consent. She's just giving in. And it's just these bad moments of that kind of thing. And she always kind of goes back to him and she reverts into something lesser than herself. And she even says near the end of it, she didn't feel like a person until she was in her 30s. Like, she only finally felt like a fully formed person when she was in her 30s. And I think that is correct. Like, Sadie had a good character arc, I'll say, but they didn't feel real to me. They felt flat. Like, they felt like there was something missing. And as I said in my first clip, I still didn't buy their relationship at the beginning, didn't buy their friendship, but for the rest of it, it was pretty standard, I guess. I don't know. Because I literally wrote down somewhere the trajectory of their relationship because it was wild if you like broke it down into things. Strangers to friends to strangers to colleagues to friends to colleagues to strangers to, like, it just kind of like ping-ponged like that. It never became romantic between them, which I think is interesting. My enjoyment was mid, if we're going off the Cawpile rating system, the E at the end, enjoyment. And I will say that the treatment of disability in here was fantastic. And I enjoyed all the bits about the video games. I thought that was really interesting. As someone who doesn't really know a lot about video games and doesn't really care a lot about them, but I do really enjoy watching like playthroughs, and I enjoyed listening to people talk about video games, and the concept is so interesting to me. I really enjoyed that aspect of this. Marks was my favorite character. This book did him so dirty. He actually was the only one who felt more real than the other ones. He just felt like he knew what he was doing, and he felt like an actual person, whereas Sadie and Sam didn't. You know what they felt like? They felt like video game characters, and maybe that was Gabrielle Zevin's point. Sam and Sadie feel like video game characters. They don't feel quite real. Anyways, I am going to leave this here, and I will eventually rate it and run it through Cawpile, but done book 2. Hello, friends! It's me. I'm popping in for an update because I'm now back home from the cabin freshly washed, so I do apologize for the state of my hair. I wanted to pop in and say hey and do a little update on the books that I did read this weekend because I got through 2 of them. So this weekend I ended up bringing these 3 bad boys up to the lake with me and ended up finishing both of these yesterday. So we'll do Talia Hibbert first. So I ended up reading The Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, which I think was my friend Sophie's pick. And this was just okay for me. It's my least favorite Talia Hibbert, but I was kind of expecting that going in because it is a YA romance. And the only YA romance that really does it for me is my friend Sarah Sutton's YA romance. I don't know what she puts in those books. It must be crack because it's every single thing that she does is amazing. This one was, it's Talia Hibbert, so it was enjoyable and it was good and it left me feeling warm and fuzzy by the end of it, which is what you want from a romance. But what I love from Talia Hibbert is her steamy scenes, and you don't get a single steamy scene in here because obviously it's YA. So that was a thing. But it was good. It was well written. It was enjoyable. Very quick read. Took me 3 hours maybe, and that was with a couple disruptions in the middle and half listening to my parents' conversations because I was at the lake. I liked our main characters. I liked the OCD rep, but I just I don't know what it is. I just don't like reading about teenagers. And this one is so of right now. It's painful. Our main girl here, Celine, she's on TikTok. So it's very right now. And it is very British teenagery. And it is just so much in that aspect. I love how colorful our characters are when we get them from Talia Hibbert. I love them so much. Eve Brown and Chloe Brown and Danny Brown are my favorite romance heroines ever. I love them so much. And Celine was their little sister turned up on steroids. It's she's not actually their little sister. Different entirely. But it felt like that. It felt like she had all their personalities amped up to 100. And she was just so colorful and lovely to read from and so vibrant and I loved it. But the fact that they were teenagers kind of kept hitting me in the face. So yeah, I did enjoy it. This is about Bradley and Celine, who are mortal enemies, and you get both points of view in here, which I think is great. Although I will say the way that the points of view were split were not chapter by chapter, so you skipped Brad and Celine would swap back and forth in the chapters, and sometimes that confused me a little bit. That's probably just because I wasn't paying enough attention, but it did confuse me a little bit occasionally because they're both in first person point of view. But definitely cute, slow burn. But yeah, Bradley and Celine are mortal enemies, and they used to be the best of friends. Their moms are best friends, and Celine is determined at the beginning of this to kind of join this natural situation program which offers 3 different scholarships at the end of it, full ride scholarships, and she's that would be perfect for me. She ends up breaking her hand on the first day, or her wrist on the very first day of school. Bradley actually kind of breaks it as they're fighting and bantering. Someone opens a door and Celine falls and Bradley catches her, but then lets go of her because he's oh my god, I shouldn't be touching her. And then she fractures her wrist. So because of that, she can't drive herself anywhere. So he drives her to this meeting a little bit later that week because he feels sorry. And then he ends up joining the program as well. They're academic rivals. The banter was so good at the beginning. I loved it. And it was an actual good enemies to lovers read, in my opinion. I do recommend this, and it was very well written and very cute. And I have yet to put it through Cop-Out, but I did enjoy this. Started Neverwhere on Saturday when I got there. Finished it yesterday, Sunday, and this was also very, very interesting. I don't know, neither of these are my favorite reads, but I still really enjoyed both of them in different ways. This one I enjoyed more than the Talia Hibbert. This was picked by my friend SJ. Gosh, I don't know. I have so many thoughts about this one. So I've the only other Neil Gaimans that I've read in my life are Good Omens, which is a split between Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and Stardust. I loved Good Omens, and I liked Stardust. I liked the beginning of it, but the end just lost all the good character stuff. This was very good. This felt, I'll give you what it feels like to me right off the top. It felt like Good Omens-esque with the British humor and the really good descriptions. It wasn't quite as funny as Good Omens, and I think that's because Terry Pratchett has a more dry way of writing humor, especially British humor. And Neil Gaiman is more descriptive, which I like more. I don't like the way Terry Pratchett writes. I can't stand those books. But I really enjoy Neil Gaiman, which is why I really liked Good Omens, because it was very good and very readable. This had a Good Omens feel, mixed with a Doctor Who episode and The Unsleeping City by Dimension 20. So, such a niche recommendation. But if you like Doctor Who and Dimension 20, pick this up. Specifically the Unsleeping City by Dimension 20. It had really interesting below city vibes, and it had that like vibe from the Unsleeping City where there's a hidden world within the world, because there's the sixth borough in the Unsleeping City because it's set in New York, and the sixth borough is the magic borough kind of a thing. But here we're dealing with London below and London above. So London above is everything else, like normal London, and then London below is a little bit more magical and a little bit interesting. And I still don't understand the magic going on in this book, but I want to so desperately. And there's a story in the back of this that says that Neil Gaiman might be returning to this world at some point, which I really hope he does, because I want to know more. I want to know why Door in here can open doors. I want to know why her grandpa built their mansion so that it's spread throughout London below. I want to know what's up with the Marquis. I want to know what's up with Richard. So this is about Richard, who is a totally normal guy. And at the beginning of this, he's living his life. He's got a girlfriend who he's like kind of low-key surprised or he's got a fiance, sorry. He's low-key surprised that she's even with him. And he's got, like a corporate job. He's moved to London a couple years ago, all this kind of stuff. He is living life, living large. But one day, him and his fiance are off to a dinner with his fiance's boss. He's running super late and like didn't make the reservation, all this kind of stuff. And she's just like, Richard, is so irritated at him. But then they're walking through London to get to the restaurant, and he sees this girl, unconscious, bloodied, just fell out of a wall and appeared there. And he's just like, oh my God, we can't just leave her. And it almost seems like his fiance doesn't see her at first. Like Jessica kind of just steps over this girl's body and doesn't really see her. But Richard kind of, is like, well, she did that to the actual homeless person too. Like, she might just be treating them like this because she's in a hurry or whatever. But he's just like, we literally cannot leave this girl. And she's like, Richard, if you walk away from this, like, our engagement's done. And he's just like, all right. And he picks up this unconscious girl who's bleeding and brings her back to his flat and takes care of her. And then in this, gets embroiled in this whole thing because that was Door. And Door is a last remaining family member of a really important family that was just murdered by this person for some reason, where these two people, like these two henchmen that keep following Door around and trying to kill her as well. And she escaped through doors because she can create doors wherever she is, and she can open anything to anywhere kind of a thing. Really cool magic system. I still don't understand it, but I love it. And she ended up opening a door to Richard because she basically said, I need to be somewhere safe with someone safe. And Richard ended up being embroiled in this. And because of that, when Dora is better and like leaves with the Marquis after whatever, he becomes invisible and non-existent in London above. So he's panicking because somebody's letting out his flat. He's literally naked in his bathroom when these people walk into his apartment and like are like, yeah, we'll rent this place. And he's just standing there and he's like, they can't see me. No one at my job can see me. They've got rid of my desk. Jessica doesn't even remember who I am anymore. Oh my God. And like all this stuff is happening. He ends up going to London below and helping Door and the Marquis do something, find this angel named Islington. And it's like this whole adventure thing. I really enjoyed this. The more that I'm talking about it, the more I'm like I like it. This is like the city we became. This is like the Starless Sea. This is like Good Omens. Like it has the vibes of like cities, which is really cool. And then also like the layers of like, I don't know, the secret underground world. This was great. This was great. Both of those are done now. I will let you know when I rate these at the end of the video. I also read about 500 pages of Oathbringer this weekend. So I am 40% of the way through this tome, and I will keep making my way through this. Hopefully this week I will be wrapping up Oathbringer bit by bit. If not, I will wrap it next weekend. But I am loving this. So this is the next book we'll talk about, and then we'll talk about Kaikeyi last, or maybe together, because Kaikeyi is definitely smaller than this, but it is also like a thick book. And I'm interested by Kaikeyi because I've read half of it last year and then put it down. So I'm going to be restarting it. Don't worry, I'm going to be restarting it. I think I'm going to get the audiobook and just actually get into it and like let the story wash over me, because I just wasn't super into it when I last picked it up. So hopefully this time around it'll go better. But yeah, Oathbringer, I'm thriving. I can't really tell you anything about this because this is the third book in the Stormlight Archives. I don't like it as much as Words of Radiance, which is the second book. That one was so good. But this is definitely good. I am thriving in this world yet again. Yes, I love the lore and like the pieces of the puzzle that are starting to come together. I'm really intrigued to see how Brandon Sanderson does this super epic series, because honestly, it feels like he could be done with like 5 books if he wraps it up enough, because it does feel like things are starting to come together, which I know is not a thing because he's got so many planned, so we know the man's gonna have an immensely large series at some point. Next time you see me, I will hopefully be into Kaikei or Down Oathbreaker, but you'll see me again. Alright, I'll catch up with you later. Hello friends. It is now a couple days later. I started Kaikei, and I have just officially, just like a second ago, reached where I had originally left off. This book is so slow. Thank God for the audiobook, because I remember reading this physically last year and it just wasn't doing it for me. There's been a couple annotations where I've been like, okay, like, is this where it like finally picks up? Like, I'm bored, like, and that sounds like it's an interesting story and it's good. I'm a little bored, but that's okay. So I've reached the spot where I was, which is page 200. Gosh, my brain is so empty of thoughts for this book. I don't know what it is. Writing is lovely. I find Kaikei very interesting and intriguing, especially because Kaikei is a retelling of the story of Kaikei, who is a figure from Hindu myth and legend, I believe. Kaikei, I'm reading the author's note at the beginning here, is the stepmother to a noble prince named Rama. So this is the retelling of her life, I guess, kind of giving her more agency than she has in those stories and myths, where she appears mostly as a villainous figure. So it's reimagining her life and her abilities, because she's got some interesting magical powers that she gets when she's a little girl. Like, she discovers them herself, and she uses those powers to manipulate people to her own will, which we all know is a fine line. Is a fine line in anything, being able to manipulate people, even if it's like very innocent. At the beginning, Kaikei is just like, please let me like leave, skype out of classes and stuff. It's very innocent at the beginning. We all know manipulation, and the power to do so is never completely pure and innocent. And there's an interesting conversation here that reminds me a lot of She Who Became the Sun, about gods and how much gods can see. I think She Who Became the Sun is one of the only books that I've ever read and come across that has the idea that gods are not omnipotent, they can't see everything. But Kaikei has the same ideals that a lot of books have, that gods can see everything, and you have to be careful as to what you say, as to like not blaspheme against them, yada yada. But there's the whole idea of that, like, she has just kind of given herself to the fate of not following the gods' wills and kind of just like not catering to the gods, because they've, like, since she was a child, like, have never answered her wishes or anything. So she's just like, alright, like, I'm just gonna not care. And I'm like, alright, Kaikei, let's go. And there's a moment in here where we kind of find out why the gods have been treating her like this, which is kind of interesting because, one, it grounds the gods as like real beings in this world, which I guess makes sense. And two, actually gives them agency in people's lives, to the extent of which, like, people will notice if the gods are not being kind to them, and they'll believe that they've been cursed by something. Which is so interesting, because that also leads into the fact that, like, is everybody important enough to have their lives be looked at by gods? God, there's so many people. That would take so much time, you know? I don't know. It's an interesting thought, and obviously Kaikei is a very important figure, and she's caught the eye of the gods in some kind of a way, whether that's her future or something that she's done. So, I don't know. It's interesting. It's boring though. Like, truly nothing has happened except for Kaikei growing up and then getting married off. So we'll see how the rest of this goes. I'm kind of treating it more like in the vein of, instead of like a fantasy, which I know it is a fantasy, but instead of treating it like a normal fantasy, I'm treating it like Circe, which is the same vibe. Slow storytelling, isn't like super action packed. So if you really like Circe, this is probably right up your alley. I didn't love Circe. It kind of fell lower than what I expected it to be. And I think that that's what's happening with this one too. Although my expectations for this one were pretty low anyways, because I did try to read it last year. I will let you know how I feel about this when I finish this tome. Hello, friends. It is next day since I last talked to you. And I just finished Kaikei and oh, what a slog to get through. Oh my god. I hate that I'm saying this. Wanted to love this book. I was so bored and I just didn't care about what was going on. I have like no opinions about the book at all. It's this weird like complete apathy for it. The writing is nice. It was okay. I ended up skimming the last 100 pages because I didn't care. I just wanted it to be done. Nothing was interesting. It felt all, there were interesting parts, but it just felt all very one note to me. I'm so sad that this was such a dud for me, but maybe it was obvious as to last year me putting it down and not wanting to read it or pick it up or anything. And my note from the last time was correct. I was bored and I remain bored. Maybe this kind of mythology retelling is just not for me. Beautiful book. If you loved Cersei, you'll love this. Apparently this kind of book is just not for me. But that one's done, thank God. And now we only have Oathbringer left to finish. So I don't know how many pages left there are, but I'm on page 497 and there are 1,233 pages. So I have all of this to go. I'm done with reading tonight. I'm low-key just a little pissed off about Kaikei because I wanted to like it and it just didn't do it for me. I hate not liking books like this because I was scrolling through Goodreads and just review after review is 5 stars. It has such a high rating and then like the only bad reviews are people who are angry at Vaishnavi Patel for taking this mythology and making Kaikei not a villain, even though Kaikei is low-key a villain in this. But like in myth, she's like completely villainized. Vaishnavi's taken the story of Kaikei and made her more of a person, given her a voice, given women a voice in mythology, which we love to see. I love that she did this. I lost my point that I was trying to say. But I don't know. Yeah, the 1 stars in Goodreads are all angry people who are like, no, this is not who Kaikei actually is. No. And I'm like, just take it as a grain of salt. If you don't want to read a story about that, just don't read it. You don't have to leave angry messages. But yeah, all of them are like 5 stars or like 1 star, which is crazy. I guess next when I talk to you will be maybe at the end of Oathbringer or maybe an update on Oathbringer. It's so hard to update on this book because it is a sequel. So maybe at the end to wrap up my thoughts about it. Hello, my lovely friends. It is officially the end of this video. You've made it to the end. I've made it to the end. We did it. I just finished reading Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, which took me longer than I wanted it to. It is now officially March 8th, I think. March 9th? March 8th? March 9th! It took me 9 days longer than I wanted it to, but we're here and we finished it and it was pretty good. I do say so myself. I think it is my least favorite of the Stormlight Archives that I have read, but it is still like a 4 to 4.5 star read for me. I do have to sit on it and think a little bit because the ending was so good. Like the last like 200, 300 pages were so good. I did find a lot of this to be a little bit of a slog though. So, and I never want that when I'm going into a large book like this because it's such a large book. As always, Brandon Sanderson is a freaking master. And we love it. We love to see it. But yes, friends, let's go through this. Let's go through what I've read and their official ratings. So we started off this video with Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, which is an epic sci-fi. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. After all, like the first 75% of this book was a 5-star for me, but the last 25% felt too long and a little bit too information dumpy. And I kept waiting for it to wrap up and it just didn't quite do it for me. So this is why the whole book as a whole gets a 4-star. Then I ended up reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This I only gave 3.5 stars because it just missed the mark for me. I liked like the video game aspect and enough of the story, but I ended up skimming about 100 pages of this near the end. And I didn't really attach to any characters and stuff like that. The characters kind of fell flat, but it was still good, and I do recognize why people really loved it, so 3.5 stars. Then I read another 3.5 star book, which was Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This was a cute little YA romance. Yeah, I mean, all my thoughts in this video have been already stated. It was good, but again, it was very YA, very teenage, very of a genre that I don't love reading, so 3.5 stars. You guys know all my thoughts. I have given you all my thoughts. After that, I finished Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This I ended up giving 4 stars. And this one is probably the only one out of this entire group that I would reread. I think that this might just get better and better on reread because I feel like there are so many layers to Neil Gaiman's storytelling that I need to explore a little bit more. But yeah, 4 stars. Then I finished Kaikei, which really missed the mark for me, and I only gave it 2.5 stars. Like, whenever I think about this now, I still am so irritated about it just because of the way that it put me in a weird reading mood for like a solid weekend and almost a week after reading this. I don't know what it was, but I do think that this just is quite simply not for me because it is not a bad book. I think that if you love the longer, more epic tales in the vein of Circe and a lot of those mythology retellings, this is definitely going to be for you. For me, no. I was kind of bored. That's okay. We can't have all winners. And then lastly, of course, Oathbringer, which as I said will be a 4 and a 4, between a 4 and a 4.5. So this is probably the best out of the entire video, but overall, like, nothing was a huge winner, which is kind of disappointing because I was so excited for this entire TBR this go around. But overall, I am glad that I finally read a lot of these books, especially some of these bigger ones, and, you know, got them off my TBR finally. But, oh, this is gonna be fun because Neverwhere is so tiny. This is going to be the order of like enjoyment wise. But yeah, I love doing these kind of videos because as I've said before, these kind of videos, you know, help me read books on my TBR that I might not get to at any point. It's nice as a mood reader to have a variety of books to choose from, but also a strict TBR that my friends have picked for me. I don't know, it's great. And this is why I love doing this so much. So these are all the books that I read in the month of February and a little bit into March, but we won't think about it too hard, that my friends picked out for me, which I'm very happy about. So yes, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out with me for this long video. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, or if you have nothing else to comment, just leave me a book stack emoji and I'll know that you made it all the way to the end of this video because I always love when you guys comment. But yes, my friends, actually, if you made it to the end of this video, you're gonna get let in on a little secret that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I just read a bunch of books. A Second Story is officially up on Goodreads, my friends. You can add it to Goodreads now. The link is in the description of this video. It is now available to add on Goodreads and Storygraph. So you can add it to your TBRs and your want to read lists and all that good stuff. But it's totally sidebar, but shameless self-promotion. I'm just so excited for everybody to read this book. So it's gonna be so good. Anyways, friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.